They say some moments don't just happen. They carve themselves into you. They stay there, buried under the skin, breathing with every heartbeat. It's been 2 years now. 2 birthdays. 2 long, aching years since everything changed. Since I learned that not all surprises are wrapped in ribbons. Some are wrapped in silence, in guilt, in the kind of loneliness that clings to your soul like wet clothes. I still remember waking up that morning, the sunlight leaking through the blinds, the smell of fresh coffee in the air, the soft hum of a tune coming from downstairs. For a moment, I let myself believe it was going to be a good day, a special day, maybe even the kind of day where love felt simple again. I was wrong. I should have known by the way Mark kissed me that morning, too quick, too distracted, like he was somewhere else already. I should have known by the way he kept checking his phone, smiling at messages he wouldn't let me see. But I didn't. I didn't want to. When you've been lonely long enough, you start making excuses for things that should break your heart. I told myself he was planning something sweet. Something just for me. After all, it was my birthday. When he told me to stay home and relax, when he said, "Tonight's gonna be special, babe," I smiled. I believed him. Because sometimes, hope is the cruelest thing we cling to. I spent the day floating between excitement and nerves. Tidying up the house, picking out a dress, spraying on the perfume he used to love, the one he hadn't mentioned in months. I lit candles. I played our old songs. I even rehearsed how I'd thank him when he finally showed me that he still cared. I wanted so badly to believe I mattered. And when the doorbell rang that night, when I heard the laughter spilling through the door, I still didn't see it. I thought maybe they were here to celebrate with me. Maybe he had planned a surprise party. Maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been forgotten after all. I didn't know. I didn't know that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hand you over to heartbreak with a smile. I didn't know the kind of surprise that was waiting for me. The kind of night that would split my life into before and after. I didn't know. But I was about to. And once you hear what happened, you'll understand why birthdays don't feel the same anymore. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. You won't want to miss what comes next. I guess if you really want to understand how that night broke me, you need to know a little about the life I was living before it happened. I'm 36. Or I was 34 when this happened. I don't know. After a certain point, the years just blend together when you're lonely. Mark and I had been married for almost 10 years. And in the beginning, he made me feel like the center of the universe. There were flowers just because. Surprise weekends away. Long, lazy nights talking until the sun came up. I used to believe in us. I used to believe that kind of love didn't just fade. But somewhere along the way, it did. Or maybe it didn't fade. Maybe it just got buried under everything else. The bills, the work trips, the late nights spent staring at different sides of the couch. Mark changed. Or maybe I changed. I'm not even sure anymore. All I know is, somewhere between year 5 and year 8, I stopped being someone he chased. I became someone he tolerated. He stopped looking at me like he used to. He stopped listening, even when he pretended he was. Conversations got replaced with nods and half-smiles. Date nights got replaced with maybe next weekends. And somewhere along the line, he found new companions to fill the silence. Eli, Jason, Chris, his friends, his brothers, he called them. They were loud, funny, always ready with a drink or a story. The kind of men who filled up a room without asking permission. The kind of men who made you feel like you were missing out if you weren't laughing along with them. At first, I didn't mind them. They made Mark happy. And I liked seeing him happy, even if I wasn't the reason anymore. But after a while, I started noticing things. The way their conversations always excluded me, even when I was sitting right there. The way Mark seemed to light up around them in a way he never did with me anymore. The way plans got canceled if they texted. The way guys' nights seemed to matter more than us nights. I told myself it was normal. That men needed their space. That maybe if I gave him enough of it, he'd eventually miss me. But deep down, I knew better. I always wondered why Mark needed so many friends around, especially when he barely seemed to notice me anymore. And our house. It looked perfect from the outside. Pretty little suburban street. Fresh paint on the porch. Birthday banners taped to the walls. But inside, it was cold. Not the kind of cold you feel in your skin. The kind that settles in your bones. I tried to warm it up. Tried to breathe life back into it with candles, music, homemade dinners he never touched. But you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm forever. Eventually, you just burn out. That night, standing in that house, surrounded by half-hearted decorations and the echo of laughter that didn't belong to me, I realized how empty it all really was. I should have seen it coming. I should have known. But love, or the memory of it, has a way of making you blind to the cracks in the walls around you. That night was supposed to be about me, about celebrating another year of life. Instead, it became the night I realized how much of my life I'd been living alone, even when I wasn't. And it was only just beginning. The morning started off strange. Mark was different, more attentive than I was used to. Hovering in the kitchen while I made coffee, stealing glances at me over the rim of his cup. Smiling in that way he used to, but hadn't in a long, long time. At first, it warmed something in me. Made me think maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe today really would be different. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, kissed the back of my neck, and whispered, "Stay home today. Relax. Let me take care of everything. Tonight's gonna be special, babe." I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to believe him. So I nodded. I tucked all my doubts into the back of my mind and decided to trust him. One more time. The house was quiet for most of the afternoon. I watched the clock more times than I could count. I touched up my makeup even though nobody was there to see it yet. I kept glancing at my phone, wondering if he'd text, if he'd forgotten anything, if he was thinking about me the way I was thinking about him. When the doorbell finally rang, I jumped. I thought maybe it was him, maybe with flowers, maybe with some elaborate plan to whisk me away. I rushed to the door, heart pounding in my chest like a teenager on prom night. But it wasn't Mark. It was Eli, and Jason, and Chris, his 3 best friends. Arms loaded down with bottles, balloons, and grins stretched too wide across their faces. They stumbled in like they owned the place, laughing, shouting happy birthday like it was some kind of inside joke I didn't understand. Their energy was loud, almost too loud, bouncing off the walls and rattling something deep inside me I didn't have words for yet. I plastered on a smile. I told myself maybe they were helping Mark set something up. Maybe this was all part of the surprise. But there was something about the way they looked at me. Something that prickled under my skin. Their smiles lingered a little too long. Their eyes wandered just a little too low. And when they hugged me, each of them tighter than they needed to, I felt it. That heaviness. That knowing. Mark came through the door last. Laughing, carrying a blindfold in his hand. I laughed too. Nervous. Unsure. "What's that for?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He just grinned. "Come on, babe. Trust me. It's your birthday. Let us spoil you a little." I hesitated, everything in me screaming that something was off. But then he kissed my forehead, and for a second, I caught a glimpse of the man I married. So I closed my eyes. I let him tie the blindfold around my head. I let myself believe this was love. The world went dark. The laughter grew louder. The clinking of glasses. The brush of hands guiding me through the living room. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. But underneath all the noise, there was this gnawing feeling. This deep, sinking sense that whatever was about to happen, it wasn't what I thought it would be. Mark's voice was in my ear, soft and low. "Just relax. You're gonna love it." I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to believe him. I felt someone place a drink in my hand. Another hand brushing a little too low against my hip. I laughed it off. nerves, excitement, maybe a little fear I didn't want to name. And then, someone whispered something, words I couldn't quite catch, too close to my ear. I froze. But before I could say anything, before I could even think to take the blindfold off myself, Mark's hands were on the knot behind my head. He pulled the fabric away, and the world snapped back into focus. And when the blindfold slipped, I realized this wasn't the kind of party I had ever dreamed of. At first, my mind couldn't even make sense of what I was seeing. The living room had been cleared out. The coffee table was pushed against the wall. Candles flickered on every surface, casting the soft, golden glow that somehow made everything feel too raw, too exposed. Mark's friends stood around me, drinks in hand, grins tugging at their mouths. Grins that didn't feel friendly anymore. There were no presents, no cake, no surprise party guests hiding in the kitchen. Just the four of them. And me. The air was heavy, thick with something I didn't want to name. For a few long seconds, I just stood there, frozen, trying to find a way to laugh it off, trying to find a way to believe this was still innocent, still safe. But their eyes told another story. Their smiles, they stretched a little too wide. Their bodies leaned a little too close. I clutched the drink tighter in my hand, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I should have said something. I should have left. But I didn't, because somewhere deep inside me, somewhere I don't like to admit exists, there was a part of me that didn't want to stop it. A part of me that was tired of feeling invisible, tired of being touched out of obligation, tired of wondering if anyone still saw me as someone worth looking at. For so long, I had been hungry for something. Attention, affection, anything that made me feel like I wasn't fading into the background of my own life. And in that moment, in that heavy, golden-lit room full of wrong smiles and wrong intentions, someone was finally looking at me. Really looking. It twisted something inside me. I hated it, and I wanted more of it. Shame bloomed hot under my skin, but I pushed it down. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself maybe they just wanted me to feel beautiful again. Maybe Mark planned this to make me laugh, to remind me I was still desirable. Maybe this was love. In some broken, messed up way. Rationalizations are funny like that. They slip into your mind like smoke, clouding everything until wrong feels almost right. I remembered all the late nights spent eating dinner alone, the cold side of the bed, the way my texts would sit on read without a reply. I remembered standing in front of the mirror, wondering when exactly I had become invisible. Wondering if anyone would ever really want me again. And here they were. For men. Looking at me like I mattered. Like I was still something worth wanting. It didn't feel good. Not really. But it felt better than emptiness. And when you've been thirsty long enough, even poison starts to taste sweet. I could feel it happening. The slow unraveling. The quiet, desperate ache that had lived inside me for so long finally finding a crack to spill through. And still, I stood there. Still, I smiled. Still, I stayed. Because sometimes the heart doesn't break all at once. Sometimes, it crumbles one tiny piece at a time. And you don't even notice until there's nothing left to hold on to. And that night, in that room, surrounded by people who claimed to love me, I started losing pieces of myself faster than I could catch them. Somewhere between the second drink and the third, the atmosphere shifted. At first, it was just laughter. Loud, harmless. The kind of noise you make when you're trying to pretend everything's fine. When you're trying to pretend the heat in the room is just from the candles, and not from something slipping loose between you and everyone else. Eli found a bottle of tequila tucked away in our kitchen cabinets. He held it up like a trophy, grinning like a boy who just found buried treasure. Jason started shouting about playing truth or dare. Chris was already clearing a space on the floor, pulling the cushions off the couch like this was something they'd done 100 times before. I tried to protest. Tried to laugh it off, to say I was too old for games like that. But Mark Mark leaned down, kissed my cheek, and said, "Come on, babe. Loosen up. It's your night." His voice was light, teasing. But his eyes were cold, detached, like he wasn't really there at all. I sat down on the floor because it was easier than fighting, easier than asking why he was acting like I was someone he barely recognized. The first few rounds were harmless enough. Silly dares. Embarrassing truths. Shots slammed back between rounds of laughter that felt a little too sharp at the edges. But then the questions started getting bolder. The dares started pushing closer to lines that should never be crossed. Jason dared Eli to take off his shirt. Eli dared Chris to kiss someone's hand. Chris dared Mark to whisper something dirty in my ear. I laughed. Everyone laughed. But inside, I was shrinking. Shrinking and expanding at the same time, caught between wanting to disappear and wanting someone, anyone, to pull me back into being real again. Mark whispered in my ear. Words that made my cheeks flush, not with excitement, but with something that tasted more like shame. And the others watched, smirking, passing around the bottle like it was all just a joke. At some point, Eli pulled out a bag, small, shiny, wrapped in bright pink paper. "A little something from all of us," he said, winking as he tossed it into my lap. I peeled back the paper, hands trembling slightly. Inside was lingerie, black lace, barely there. I froze. The laughter exploded around me like fireworks that didn't light up the sky, they just burned holes in it. There was a card tucked into the bag too. I opened it with shaky fingers. Inside were jokes I didn't understand. References to nights I wasn't part of. To stories I hadn't been told. I looked up at Mark. I expected him to look embarrassed, to be annoyed, to be angry even. But he just grinned. Raised his glass toward me in a silent toast. Like he was proud. Something twisted in my chest so hard I almost couldn't breathe. I set the bag aside, forced a smile, forced another sip of whatever was burning my throat. The games kept going. The laughter kept getting louder. The dares kept pushing harder. Touches that were supposed to be playful started lingering. Hands brushing against arms, against backs, against thighs, a little too long. A little too often. Mark encouraged it. Every time I hesitated, he was there with a soft murmur. "Relax, babe. Let yourself have a little fun." But it didn't feel like fun. It felt like being peeled open, layer by layer, under the guise of celebration. At some point, Chris dared me to sit in Eli's lap. I hesitated. I shook my head, laughing, saying something about being too old for that kind of thing. Mark just laughed along with them. "Come on," he said, nudging me forward. "Don't be a party pooper. It's just a game." The room spun a little. Or maybe it was just me. I sat down. Eli's hands settled on my hips, steadying me. Lingering. The night blurred after that. Between laughter and something else. Something darker that clung to my skin. It smelled like tequila and candle wax and the slow, sickening realization that some things, once you cross them, you can never go back from. And I had a feeling. I was about to cross something I couldn't undo. The night kept pulling me under. Deeper and deeper until I didn't know which way was up anymore. Until I didn't know if I was still me or just some version of myself they wanted me to become. Someone turned up the music, low and slow, the kind that wraps itself around your skin and makes everything feel softer, easier to excuse. Chris poured more champagne into my glass, the bubbles rising too fast, spilling over the edge, sticky against my fingers. I laughed. Or maybe I cried. It's hard to remember now. Mark was next to me, his hand warm against my lower back, guiding me, coaxing me toward the couch like I was something fragile that might break if pushed too hard. "Just sit, babe," he said, his voice sweet and poisoned at the same time. "Let us take care of you." I let them. Because by then, fighting felt like trying to swim against the ocean. I sank onto the couch, the cushions swallowing me whole. More champagne pressed into my hand. More laughter floating around me like smoke I couldn't wave away. Eli sat on one side of me, Jason on the other. Chris crouched near my feet, smiling up at me like a secret he couldn't wait to tell. Mark stood back, arms crossed over his chest, watching, smiling. I clung to my glass like it was an anchor, but it wasn't. It was just another thing pulling me down. Jason leaned in, close enough that I could smell the tequila on his breath. He whispered something in my ear, words I can't repeat. Words that painted pictures I didn't want in my mind, but couldn't erase once they were there. I felt my face flush, felt my whole body lock up tight. But nobody seemed to notice. Or maybe they noticed and didn't care. Their hands were everywhere now. Not rough, not violent. Just casual, familiar. Like they had every right to touch me, to claim pieces of me that didn't belong to them. I looked at Mark. Begging, maybe. Pleading, maybe. Hoping he would say something. Stop it. Save me. But he just raised his glass in a slow, deliberate toast. And nodded. I don't know what broke inside me first, the part that trusted him, the part that loved him, or the part that still thought I was worth more than this. Maybe they all broke at once. Maybe that's why it was so easy to let go. In the haze of champagne and shame, in the confusion of broken longing and the desperate hunger to be seen, I stopped fighting. I let a boundary fall that I had spent my whole life believing was solid. I crossed a line I never thought I would even approach. I became someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone I wasn't sure I could ever forgive. And the worst part? The part that still keeps me up at night? I didn't even cry. Not then. Because in some dark, twisted corner of my heart, for just a moment, it felt good to be wanted. Even if it was for all the wrong reasons. I realized then, this wasn't about celebrating me. It was never about making me feel special or loved or remembered. It was about sharing me. Passing me around like a bottle of cheap champagne. Something to be emptied out. Used up. Forgotten when the night was over. And the man who was supposed to protect me. The man who promised to love me for better or worse. He was the one who gave them permission. The room spun around me. The music blurred into a low hum. The candles flickered against the walls like little witnesses that would never speak of what they saw. I closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, but because it hurt too much to see. It still hurts. And if you think the worst is over, you're wrong. There are twists and revelations ahead that even I didn't see coming. Subscribe now to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. The human heart is deeper and darker than we think. Morning came like a punishment. The sun spilled through the curtains too bright, too harsh, lighting up all the pieces of myself I didn't want to see anymore. I woke up in our bed, alone. The sheets rumpled beside me, cold. For a moment, I forgot. For a moment, I reached across the bed, searching for Mark's hand, searching for some small sign that it had all been a nightmare. But my hand found nothing, just empty space. Just the wide, aching quiet of a house that had seen too much. I pulled myself out of bed, every step heavier than the last. Every breath felt like dragging broken glass through my lungs. Downstairs, the smell of coffee hit me first. Normal. Domestic. Cruel in its familiarity. Mark was at the table, sipping from his favorite mug. Scrolling through his phone. Humming some song under his breath like it was any other morning. He looked up when he saw me. Smiled. Told me good morning like he hadn't watched me fall apart in front of him just hours earlier. I stood there, frozen in the doorway. Still wearing last night's makeup, smeared and cracked across my skin. Still wearing a version of myself I didn't know how to take off. He asked if I wanted breakfast. Said he was thinking pancakes. Said it was still my birthday weekend, after all. Still my birthday weekend. Like what happened the night before was just another candle on the cake. Just another box to check off the list of things married people do. I sat down at the table because standing suddenly felt impossible. My legs barely held me upright. My heart even less. He poured me coffee. He talked about the weather. About the game coming up on TV. about maybe inviting the guys over again later. I stared into my coffee cup like it could explain how the world had shifted overnight without anyone but me noticing. My phone buzzed in my lap. Messages. From Eli. From Jason. From Chris. Happy birthday again. Beautiful. Had a blast last night. Can't wait to do it again sometime. Winky face. Winking faces. Inside jokes. Memories they shared that I was supposed to laugh about, too. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But all I did was put it face down on the table and pretend it didn't exist. Pretend I didn't exist. Mark was still smiling. Still talking. Still pretending that everything was fine. And maybe, for him, it was. Maybe he hadn't lost anything. Maybe he hadn't crossed any lines in his mind. Maybe in whatever twisted place this made sense to him, this was love. Or loyalty. Or some version of it. But for me, it was something else entirely. I felt dirty. Used. Broken open in ways I didn't even know I could be. But underneath all of that, buried so deep it made me sick to even recognize it, I felt something else too. Alive. Horribly, shamefully alive. For the first time in years, someone had looked at me like I mattered. Like I was worth touching, worth wanting. Even if it wasn't real. Even if it was wrong. And that made it worse. So much worse. Because how do you wash away something that made you feel seen? Even as it made you hate yourself? How do you scrub the fingerprints off your skin when part of you still aches to feel them again? How do you forgive yourself for needing the very thing that broke you? I sat at that table, listening to Mark talk about nothing, watching the steam curl up from my coffee like tiny ghosts, and realized the damage was done. And no one could see it but me. And maybe that was the cruelest part of all. The days that followed felt like walking through a house that wasn't mine anymore. Everything looked the same. The same photos on the walls. The same worn-out couch. The same coffee stains on the kitchen counter. But nothing felt the same. And I couldn't tell if the house had changed. Or if it was just me. I couldn't stop asking myself questions. Circling around and around inside my own head until it made me dizzy. Until it made me sick. Did I betray myself that night? Did I cross a line I can never uncross? Or did someone else push me across it? Was it consent? If I didn't know what I was agreeing to? If I didn't understand the game until I was already losing it? Was I really choosing? Or was I just surviving? Sometimes I think loneliness makes you blind. Makes you reach out for anything that looks like a hand when you're drowning. Even if it turns out to be the very thing pulling you under. I kept thinking about all the small ways it started. The missed calls. The quiet dinners where silence sat heavier at the table than either of us. The birthdays with last-minute gifts still in the shopping bag. The way Mark used to look at me. And the way, eventually, he just stopped. Somewhere in all that small forgetting, I stopped asking for more. I stopped believing I deserved it. I shrank myself down into someone easy to leave. And he did. In all the ways that mattered. I see that now. But knowing it doesn't make it easier to forgive myself. Because no matter how much I want to blame him, no matter how much I want to scream that he should have seen me, should have loved me better, should have fought for me, there's still that small, broken part of me that whispers, "You let it happen. You stayed when you should have left. You laughed when you should have cried. You said yes when everything inside you was begging you to say no. And worst of all, you liked it. Even if just for a moment. Even if just long enough to forget how invisible you'd felt for so long. I feel guilt like a second skin now. Heavy. Unforgiving. Wrapped tight around my ribs until every breath hurts. I feel guilt for letting them look at me the way they did. For letting them touch me. For letting myself feel, even for a second, like I was beautiful again. I feel guilt for the silence afterward. For the way I smiled through breakfast. For the way I nodded along to Mark's jokes. For the way I told myself it would be easier if I just pretended it never happened. But it did happen. And no amount of pretending will ever make me the woman I was before. I can't see him the same anymore. I can't see myself the same, either. There's a crack in the mirror now. A fault line running right down the middle of everything I thought I knew about love, about loyalty, about who I am when no one's watching. And I keep coming back to the same question. Over and over, like picking at a wound that won't heal. Was it betrayal? If the one who was supposed to protect you was the one who offered you up? Was it really my fault? If the only thing I was guilty of was wanting to be seen? Or does that make it worse? Does that make me complicit in my own undoing? I don't have answers. Maybe I never will. Maybe some stories don't end with closure. Maybe some stories just sit inside you, like a splinter you can't pull out, hurting every time you breathe. And maybe that's what it means to survive something like this. Not to heal, not to forgive, just to live with the ache. And try to make something out of the pieces left behind. Have you ever found yourself crossing a line? Not because you stopped loving yourself, but because you forgot how it felt to be loved at all? Because that's where I found myself. Standing at the edge of something I thought I'd never touch and realizing. Sometimes it's not about desire. Sometimes it's about the ache of being invisible for too long. The hunger to be seen. The desperate need to feel real again. Even if only for a moment. And now, I can't help but wonder. Was I a villain in my own story? Or just a broken woman? Longing to be seen? Please, tell me in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if stories like this stir something deep inside you, if they make you question, make you ache, make you remember, please like this video and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Desire doesn't knock on your door wearing warning signs. It doesn't shout. It doesn't flash bright red lights telling you to run. Sometimes, it arrives dressed as kindness. A gentle touch. A warm laugh shared over a glass of champagne. A whispered dare wrapped in a smile you've been starving for. Sometimes, it hides inside the people you trust the most. The ones you never thought you needed to guard your heart against. The ones who promise to protect you. And end up handing you over to the fire. On my birthday, I thought I was celebrating life. I thought I was gathering memories to keep. Blowing out candles with wishes tucked into my chest like precious things. Instead, I was mourning who I used to be. Mourning the woman who still believed love was safe. Mourning the girl who thought loyalty was enough to anchor two people together forever. Because the truth is, some nights don't end with lessons learned neatly tied in a bow. Some nights just end. And you're left standing in the ashes, wondering when exactly the fire started. And why you never smelled the smoke until it was too late. So, if you're listening, if you're walking through your own quiet heartbreak, if you're standing at the edge of some choice you never thought you'd face, I'll say this. Be careful what you wish for on the day you blow out your candles. Because some wishes don't bring you happiness. Some wishes burn everything to ash. And some memories, no matter how tightly you close your eyes, never let you go.